Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening. I always forget that it's not just morning for everybody here. We're going to go ahead and start. I think the audio is working. Yep, the audio is working. The first item on the agenda is testing, and I don't think Dimitri was able to make it, but he did have an update, so I'll just kind of read the high level stuff. He listed two links to the ext code hash test list and the create2 test list. I'm going to add those to the Constantinople progress issue in the PM repo. And he suggests that you add your ideas as comments to the list. And also, he wants us to confirm the implementation of EIP 1014, which is the skinny create 2, which I believe we've already decided on. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe last call we decided on that because we didn't find any issues implementing it so far. He also did an update, or actually, does anyone have a like correction on that?
Yes. So regarding the skinny crate 2, we haven't finally clubbed the actual formula for the address, create address. So there were two options in the EAP, and then in the last weeks there have been some more discussions about mainly. Well, one thing is if we want to include the init code or the hash of the init code when doing the calculation. And the argument for doing sorry, only the hash of the encode is that it's easier. Well, in many situations, it's easier to include the hash than we have a fixed size of the pre-image. And it's easier to calculate on chain. It's might be simpler to calculate for a hardware wallet and stuff like that. And the second thing that there's been some discussion on is if we're going to use some RLP schema or just prepend it with OXFF. Um, yeah, well, basically, the problem with option one as written in the EAP is that it may collide, pre-image may collide with the old classic address creation, whereas either we could prepend with OXFF or we could use some alternative RP schema, which Sergeant Damian Lerner suggested. So it's not really decided.
Got it. Okay, cool. Then I'll need to put in the Constantinople tracker that this is not finalized at all, and that any implementations may need to change in that case.
Perhaps, perhaps could we finalize it today, right now?
Yeah, if we have enough people who can make that decision. I didn't know if that was something that the EIP author would have to make a decision on, or if it could be something we could just decide. But it sounds like we can just decide it. So in that case, we'll be getting to that item. So which number is that? That's 1014. I'll just add it to the agenda in a second. So we'll discuss 1014. Let me put that down. Okay, thanks, Martin. Next on Dimitri's update, he has an update on retesteth. It now supports client configurations, so you can set the configs in Bash script, so it'll use and manage the RPC socket. You can also or you could set the TCP socket to an external IP address. So if you look on the comment that I'm about to post in the chat and in the All Core Devs chat, that's just kind of an update on everything he's talking about. He also suggests that we drop block hash refactoring because we already have a lot of changes going into the hard fork. We have that on the agenda to discuss as well. Let's see, is there any other comments on testing, such as fuzz testing or things like that?
Yeah, we're getting ready to do fuzz testing, but there's not really any point to start with the fuzz testing before the PRs are implemented and it's are equally implemented in Geth and Parity at least, and they're both. It's possible. It needs to be possible to configure Constantinople. Then we can start doing the fuzz testing. As for Hive, we recently integrated the Aleph, which is the new name for CPP Ethereum. So it's running on Hive. as we speak. That's it.
Okay, great. Thanks for the update. Now we'll just go through client updates. Let's see. Let's start with parity.
Hello.
Hey, can hear you.
Since last week, we have implemented 1087. We have looked at 1014, but there's some active discussion regarding how it clashes with, I think, 87, 86. And yeah, the sort of remaining question is, like we said in last call, that we were going to give a 1087 a shot. We did. We found some issues. It sort of prevents some optimizations that we're doing. And Wei will talk more on this later. Of like, we have a proposal for our replacements, or yeah, he can talk more about the trade-offs there. But basically, I mean, we're at a stage where we could easily have full Constantinople compatibility within a pretty short amount of time, like a number of weeks at most.
How many weeks was that again? I couldn't hear.
Like a number, like say 1 or 2 weeks.
Oh, cool. Nice. That's pretty good. Thanks for the update. Geth, do we have someone here, Martin or someone?
I might be the only one, and I wasn't really prepared for that. I don't think we've done any major changes recently. Peter is still working on pruning, which is pretty complex. Yeah, so no real updates for now.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Let's do a Leth next. So that was formerly CPP Ethereum.
Yeah, so we're working mostly on Constantinople changes. 3 of them that are more or less specified are implemented. The left one is net cost storage for S-Store, and yeah, we are releasing version 1.4. So there is release candidate if anyone is interested. Binary is available on the GitHub, and if no issue found reported during the next week, we will just release the final version.
Okay, great. Thank you. Next we have, let's do Ethereum J or Harmony.
We have started to work in Constantinople. I can say that 1087 is pretty straightforward to implement in Ethereum J, but after yesterday's discussion, I decided to wait the decision between those two EIPs, like 1087 and 1283. So that's it for now. I just started, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone here from Trinity? No. Do we have anyone here from Ethereum JS? Okay. What about Nimbus?
Yeah, I can take a few notes on Nimbus. So basically, we've been busy implementing enough ground support in NIM for all the cryptography primitives and Ethereum primitives, and we've reached the stage where we pass all the VM tests. We're working on downloading blocks and things like this, and at this point, we're also splitting up our development resources into 2 parts. One will focus on the core chain, the Ethereum 1.0 chain, whereas the other part will focus on the sharding chain and getting a beacon chain going as soon as we build those primitives. So that's what's going on the Nimbus side. We've also opened up a Gitter channel, status IM Nimbus. For those that if you want to get in touch with us over Gitter, it's being bridged to our Riot channel, which existed before. And I'll just make a plug here for the ECDC videos that are out. Link was posted in the All Core Devs channel on Gitter, and another one was posted on the ETH Status Twitter account. So check that out if you want to see what we did in Berlin last month. So thanks.
Thank you for the update. Do we have anyone here from Mana or Nethermind? All right, what about Pegasus?
Hey everyone, Matt from Pegasus here. So still working on our mainnet sync. Last time I said we were able to sync to block 2.8 million. Now we're in Byzantium able to sync to 4.46 million. We're still implementing those ZK snarks pre-compiles, but I guess they haven't been executed on the main chain to date, so our sync continues. Besides that, we're working on stabilizing our networking code and JSON RPC support and all that good stuff. Nothing on Constantinople.
Okay, thanks so much. Do we have anyone from EWASM?
Hey Hudson, looks like it's me and Pavel. Pavel, did you want to say anything? Otherwise, I can jump in and just do a really quick update.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, not a ton to report on our side. Still working on some tooling around Rust and assembly script in particular, which is pretty exciting. So we hope to have more to share on that stuff soon, including implementing some of the precompiles in like in Rust, for example. Primarily focused on testnet, getting kind of a public testnet up and running and kind of DevOpsy tooling stuff around that. The other thing I would say is we've been thinking a lot about the design, kind of this EEI, Ethereum Environment Interface design, and in particular, kind of versioning around it and modeling this a little bit after kind of the EIP process, but again, kind of with the nice addition of like versions. So we're kind of like sealing off the current version of what that spec will look like and beginning to put in place the roadmap kind of going forward. What are some of the new kind of interface methods and things that we're going to introduce and sort of breaking a little bit away from pure EVM compatibility, which we had been doing up to now. That's it.
Thank you.
I just reminded that Alex has compiled Rust EVM to WebAssembly. And yeah, maybe we'll try to use it at some point.
Cool.
Yeah, I think he also pulled the WASM interpreter out of Parity and compiled that to WASM or something. So there's been some fun experimentation going on here as well.
Great. All right. Do we have anyone from the research team to talk about sharding or sharding plus Casper? I don't think anyone's here from the research team.
Hi Hudson, I can give you an update on the TurboGuess if you want to.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, Lexi, I didn't see you there.
Okay. Well, sorry. I didn't say hi. Sorry.
It's okay.
So what I've done so far is that I got a few weeks ago I got this the fall on the tip of the chain working. So the latest instance has been fall on the chain for about a week now, and it didn't fail yet. It's doing it in a pretty stable way. So and then currently I'm testing and fixing the RPC API. And basically, after this is done, it's going to be pretty much functional. And I'm planning to basically test it within Infura first, just because these guys have a big. They probably be one of the people who benefit most from TurboGet because of the smaller disk size requirement. And actually, I'm going to do the benchmark of RPC requests against the Geth to see if there's any advantage, and I think there will be some advantage. So yeah, that's my update. Pretty much, yeah.
Cool, thank you. And yeah, there's no one from research here, so we'll just skip that and move on to the next agenda item. Um, we're back to talking about the difficulty bomb and the reduction or increase in block reward. Does anyone have any new insights or opinions on what to do about the block reward specifically? Everyone agreed on doing the difficulty bomb delay, but what we're stuck on is what to do about the block reward due to it being a very, I guess I would describe it as an economics problem or a crypto economics problem that a lot of people didn't comment on last time. Okay. We may have to table that one again then, because I don't think there's really been any changes to it. Another EIP was created to disable the bomb, and I didn't put that on the agenda because we decided last time to disabling the bomb was off the off the table. So let's see. We might just jump into Constantinople then, unless anyone had any other stuff on the block reward reduction or increase.
So I guess the question is, how do we resolve this and decide what to go with for Constantinople?
Yeah, that's a good question. Part of what I was thinking is getting people who really care about it and getting them on the call, and seeing what their opinions are, or coordinating with some of the researchers like Danny who have looked into this and written up reports to see what their thoughts are. Because if we have anybody with a strong opinion, it might just go through, um, because no one has an opinion right now that's very public.
But the people who really care about it are the miners, right?
Yeah, they're definitely going to have a say in this as well. I've been meaning to reach out to some of them and get their opinion. I know that some of them have commented on GitHub. I don't know if they've revealed that they're miners or not, but I know some comments on some of the EIPs have been from miners.
So all the resources that Afri linked to were proponents of block reward reduction, right?
I hadn't had time to look at them, so I'm not sure.
Does it make sense to try to reach out to miners to get them on this call and hear them out, or is like, I know at least one I can reach out to?
Great. I'll hook up with you after this call then, Fred, and we'll figure it out. But yes, they should be on this call giving their opinion on it. Um, I know a couple of miners from some of the pools, and so I can reach out to them as well. So maybe next meeting will be really like that'll be the biggest topic of discussion. As far as implementation of this, it's very trivial, am I right? So this is one of those things that doesn't need to be decided about like in the next week or anything to be put into Constantinople.
Well, I remember that I think Casey was it Casey who was saying that the changes which include to include the formula of difficulties, they have some problematic bits about testing them. And he was it him he's so saying that basically it's like sometimes you have to pray that this is going to work because it's very difficult to test on a test net. But I may be mistaken.
Yeah, so I think the problem is not is that we in order to test the difficulty calculation formula, we can't run the regular block test because we need like millions of blocks. So for last fork, we implemented a new kind of test, and it's in this standard test case repository, but it's not. It doesn't resemble the existing, state tests, blockchain tests, etc. So it required all the client implementers to implement some new test harnesses to run them natively on their own frameworks. So it was not something which we could run black boxed like we do with the Hive blockchain test. I guess that's the problem. This time around, it should be easier since hopefully all the client implementers already have that have implemented those test cases. So it should be just a matter of adding new of the same kind.
I see. Okay. Um, so does that mean that it is easier than it was last time? Is that's kind of what I'm reading?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we'll definitely have a lot of people on next time to talk about this. Does anyone else have comments on this or any ideas on the way we should resolve this? I'd love suggestions too for that.
Yeah, just a thought. We touched upon this briefly on the last call, but I think this is a very interesting example of a question which is less technical and more, again, I'm using this term philosophical / economic, for the reasons described. Like, it's not technically, it shouldn't be at least super challenging. And as Martin said, hopefully the sort of test harnesses are already in place. And so I don't know, given that we have Greg and Jamie and sort of Boris here from Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians. I mean, I guess sort of FEM is also a mostly technical initiative, but I'm just raising this open question, and I don't have an answer. Right? What is the right channel for having these conversations? Is it Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians? Is it the All Core Devs call? Is it EIP 0? Is there a particular forum where this conversation should happen?
Yeah. Does anyone have from the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians who are here have any opinions on that right now? If not, if you have one later, you can always bring it up.
No, I don't have anything to add to that.
Okay, sounds good.
I would just add one more thing. So it's not that people don't have opinions about this. Clearly, there are sort of, we now have sort of 4 or 5 competing EIPs. So I think, Hudson, we should definitely bring this up on the next call. And I think we should make an effort to get those champions, like, if possible, sort of roughly one from each of those EIPs to make the case. I don't know if we have any of those people on this call.
That's a good point. We should bring the champions from the EIPs there because, yeah, there are. And I guess when I said earlier there weren't opinions on this, I meant purely from the core developers who from last call and this call. But yeah, obviously we need to get more voices in here to kind of shape shape how people are thinking about this issue and make sure everyone's heard. So yeah, great comments there, and we'll definitely try to do that. Let's see. Did anyone else have anything else to say on that?
Hello, this is Jordi. I would like to add maybe probably it's a personal opinion, but I think the way to solve that is if we delay let's say 6 months the difficulty bomb in some way, we should try to keep the asymptotic total supply that the difficulty bomb gives constant. So we should reduce a little bit the block reward in order to keep the total supply at the moment that the difficulty block starts happen at the end, having exactly the same total supply. I think for me it's a good criteria to decide how much the block should be reduced.
Yeah, Jordi, I think that's one very interesting and reasonable approach here. I'm trying to remember do you know offhand which EIP suggested? I think Offrey's EIP is the one that suggests doing exactly as you're describing.
Yeah, I don't remember either. I think it might have been Offrey's.
And to be clear, that's another argument in favor of that approach, is that I believe it's what was done last time.
Oh, interesting.
Yes, I believe so too.
Okay.
Or just an FYI, the Afri actually put a bunch of useful links in the agenda for this call if anyone listening to this wants to go in and read up.
Yep, I just posted the link to it. So I'll try to read through some of those and get a better idea of each EIP's position.
And yeah, just another thought. I think the problem may not be that people aren't aware of the discussions and haven't read. It might be just the problem of actually making the decision. So something to ponder about is if there should be some kind of voting on the all core dev or something like that. I don't know.
Greg, did you have something? I saw you unmute for a second, so I wasn't sure. Okay. Cool. Any other comments on this?
I was just going to say that I think the word voting is a trigger word.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like the worst case scenario that you guys were to change the rewards too low, then you alienate all your miners, then they would like not mine the network or something like that and go to other networks and mine? Or just trying to understand it.
Yeah, that's one of the primary concerns, is my understanding. We would just be pissing miners off. That's the main one.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I was just saying, if we've got multiple EIPs and authors, inviting them to hash it out on the Magicians forum or some other forum, might reduce the number of VIPs if they can hash it out together.
Yeah, I'll put that as a
Well,
thing to do for me to get in touch with them.
I think even more so, again, from a champion's perspective, scheduling a call dedicated to just that, because I don't know that writing more lines of text is going to help.
Right. It's getting the various champions together, and they may decide they don't really need all of those different EIPs. They can come to some consensus themselves. So,
I mean, I don't understand how they could possibly come to consensus when like they have so totally opposing views. One don't want the block reduction at all, and
yep.
other one, someone else wants a block reward reduction.
Yeah, if they can't, they can't. But if they can, then we don't have to fight it out.
Yeah, it's worth
Sure.
putting up. It's basically like, yeah, the likelihood of it is incredibly low, but at least we can say we tried. So maybe a whole call that's just like a battle royale between the EIP authors would be fun. I'd set that up.
I do think a debate format could be interesting, like adopting some slightly more formal, debate format where you have, X minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes to make your case, and then the other person has, 3 minutes to rebuttal or something. It could be interesting.
Totally.
It could be horrible.
Why would it be horrible?
We don't need a debate. We need a technical discussion.
A technical debate discussion?
No, a discussion, not a debate. Debates just polarize people.
That's a good point. Well, maybe a public discussion on a call that's that has less of a format and more of a moderator that doesn't try to make it sound like a debate would be better. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into Constantinople. On the agenda, there is, if you click on Constantinople or the link that says Constantinople Progress, you'll get a chart of where people are implementation-wise. And I totally forgot to edit Skinny Create 2, and I'll say under discussion. Alright, so I just updated it. So we're aware that Skinny Create 2 is not finalized at all. But it looks like there were some issues with Skinny Create 2, the implementation of it. I know Parody had an issue, and then Martin, you said within the EIP itself there was discussion based on that issue, I think. So can anyone kind of give an overview? Martin gave a good one earlier, but anyone else maybe from Parody kind of give an overview of what the issue was, or was it exactly what Martin said?
Wade, do you want to cover this one?
Sure. So I think right now the issue we are facing is just that the Skinny Create tools specification is not compatible with the EIP 8.6. We also support EIP 8.6 in our plan right now, so that creates some issues, but it's minor issues. and actually those problems are really trivial. Like the stack order is different, or the and the RLP format, the creation address format is different. That's two issues we have, and the create true opcode is different. It is different opcode compared with EIP 8.6. So it just if we could modify the skinny create true EIP or the EIP 8.6 to make those two EIP compatible with each other, that would save a lot of effort for parity. Yeah, I think that's an issue we are facing.
Okay. And pardon my questions just because I don't understand the technical innards of this, but is that the same thing Martin was saying earlier, or Martin, was that a different issue?
Different issue, kind of. They're intermingled a bit.
Okay. So let's go ahead and try to figure out today some of this, as Martin suggested earlier. So I'm going to the EIP now and seeing what can be done. So it looks like Dimitri's up for option number 2, which I don't know what he's referring to exactly. Oh, basically making it on Sergio Damian Lerner's comment. There's like option 2 for how to.
I think he's referring. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
Sergio Damian Lerner. Yeah, so there are also an option 2 on the actual EIP. And there's an option 2 on Sergio Damian Lerner's.
I see. I didn't know which one he was referring to. Okay, I think you're right that he's for option 2 on the ETH. Or on the EIP.
I'm unsure myself, though.
Okay. So, what needs to be decided first for Martin's issue? And maybe that'll kind of waterfall into the issue Parity's having.
Yeah, so I would suggest that we first decide, should we include the init code or SHA of the init code? And for context, the old EIP 86 uses the SHA of the init code. So I would, and that's also what Sergio thinks is a good idea, and it has a nice property that the input to the final SHA function has a fixed length, which is nice, I think. So I would propose that we use the SHA, the hash of the init code.
Okay, what does everyone who's involved in this discussion think about that? Wei, would it help your stuff at all, or is it your things too different?
I mean, our problem is just that the EIP 86 doesn't is not compatible with the skinny create tool. So I mean, for us, it's probably okay to just for any solution would be okay on this, and we would just want to make those two spec compatible. So yeah.
I think what Martin proposes is slightly less work, but it's not really like the work amount is not really relevant to talk about.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else is involved in the discussion on this EIP is actually in this call right now. Is anyone else from who's been discussing the EIP in this call who can have an opinion?
Alexi might have an opinion. Alexi, I don't want to speak for you, obviously, but you were definitely part of that conversation.
Oh, well, maybe at some point, yes. I was just, when I was involved in this conversation, I was trying to get the idea whether this IP was okay for the people who do state channels, who is actually is designed for. But I didn't get any reply, and I just kind of dropped it at that point, because I just wanted to make sure that the people who really wanted this IP are actually happy with that, because otherwise it could be. I mean, or you can just assume that if they weren't happy, they would have told us. That was my opinion on that. Apart from that, it's I could see the to be honest, I don't really see a big difference in these things. I definitely agree that prepending the 0xFF is a good idea and is an option 2 in EIP. In terms of hashing of init code, I think it's yeah. I didn't go deep enough to understand why it's better, but I agree it could be okay. But in terms of what Wei is saying, it looks to me like they have already a lot of code which was trying to implement a different AIP, and you basically have a conundrum whether to keep that code or just throw it away and then write everything from scratch, right? So that's why it's a bit confusing. But this is, I think, what they're trying to do, right? So yeah. Apart from that, I don't have anything to say about this.
Alexei, when you talk about state channels, I assume, are you referring to counterfactual?
Yes, correct. Because when I met them in Toronto at EdCon, they were saying to me, please, can you, if you're joining the calls, please, can you ask them to do this skinny create to whatever they were calling it at that time. So they really wanted that change to be in.
Cool. Yeah, that's a really good point. They're definitely champions of this idea. I'll make an effort to reach out to them as well, maybe before the next call, and either just find out that they're comfortable with it, or if not, maybe ask one of them to join the call and share why.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be great, Lane. So,
yeah,
go ahead.
Just quickly then. So the second part is if you do an RLP list of an RLP message and RLP salt, blah blah blah, or just prepend OXFF. And I would suggest that we prepend OXFF, because if you want to do this calculation on chain, it's a big hassle to do RLP encoding on chain, unless you do it potentially erroneously.
So is that part of the list, the second comment from the bottom, Sergio's comment, when he analyzes all cases for create 2 addresses? So you're referring to number 2?
Yes.
Okay.
Sergio's number 2 is the one that I would propose as being the one we accept.
Yeah, just curious on this. I don't have really strong opinion of which should we use, but what are the problems that the RLP encoding bring? Because our existing the current creation address stream scheme already use the RLP encoding, and yeah, so just curious, what are the problems like if we continue to use the RLP encoding?
So currently, if you want to implement the current address scheme and do it on chain, you need to take the nonce into account. So you need to you need to know, if the nonce is larger than, I don't know, 0x80, then you need to RLP store that integer differently. So you can't just naively, it can become
understood. Yeah,
if you do it on chain.
And actually, I would add as well is that the reason why it is kind of important to be able to do it on chain, well, I might be wrong, but I think because this main goal of this create 2 is the counterfactual kind of instantiation, so that in most cases this will never actually be. In most cases, when the state channels were created, then the create 2 will never actually go on chain. But in the case of arbitration, they will have to be able to compute the addresses of the contracts on chain. So that's why it's kind of more important than the usual case.
Yeah, though it might be that in this particular case, there are no such dynamic things. If it's just the message sender and the salt and the SHA-3, and we know the size of them, maybe the RLP encoding is trivial after all. Yeah.
Okay. So either, I guess I didn't catch the end of that very well, but it sounds like we're either still unsure of it or we want to go with Sergio's option 2. Sergio's option 2 seems easier, right, Martin?
I would say so, yes.
Okay. I don't think anyone cares particularly how it's implemented as long as someone makes a decision, is kind of what I'm hearing.
You know, Hudson, I think we could market is the tentatively decided, but I would still like to hear the opinion of the potential users. Maybe for them it does matter. Like, for example, what the whole point of the create 2 is to make the counterfactual instantiation more efficient. So they could already do it with the current opcodes, but it's much more efficient for them to do it with the create 2. So if we now introduce the way which is make it less efficient again, then I'd rather not do it. I'd rather make sure that we do exactly what gives the maximum efficiency.
I agree.
Okay, that sounds good. And Lane, you can reach out to them. Are you only reaching out to L4, or are there other people doing counterfactual? I thought maybe Spank Chain was.
Yes, Spank Chain as well, and there's some other people. I mean, I think there might be more, lots of them actually these days.
Yeah. I will reach out to Spank Chain and L4. I'm not aware of others, but maybe we can kind of just get the word out or tweet about it or something, or maybe they can point us at other people as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. And if they can comment on the EIP, Martin, can you just do a comment on there just saying, as discussed in the meeting, Lane's going to reach out to a few people doing counterfactual instantiation. However, we're leaning toward option 2 from Sergio's list.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then back to the problem that Parity was having, which is different. That's something else that needs to be decided, but that's not something that we need to talk to. Is that something we also can talk to the counterfactual people about, Wei?
I mean, it's more like I think if we decided the best way to do the skinny create 2, then the thing for us is that we probably want to get EIP 8.6 to be compatible. So it may be, if no one cares about EIP 8.6 right now, then probably we can modify that to be the same as the skinny create 2. That would save us some problem for getting to just keep those two EIP 8.6 and skinny create 2 implementation together.
What I would say about EIP 8.6, because I was trying to revive it at some point and I found it was pretty difficult to do. So I would just completely ignore the EIP 86 for now, because even if it does come back, it will have to come back in a completely different revised form. So I would just suggest that we kind of don't mix it in right now.
86 was a count abstraction, right?
Yes, correct. That was actually including the create skinny create 2, and now later on the skinny create 2 was kind of extracted out of it to be salvaged, so that like the whole 86 was a bit too big for it to be implemented, and then one of the useful parts was skinny create 2.
I don't know how the process here works really, so it's more of a question, but like, does it make sense to close this down and say that, you know, in some definitive way, say this won't be implemented and then create a new EIP with whatever the other parts are in the future?
When you're talking about that, are you talking about from 86 to its many parts, or are you talking about specifically 1014 to spread it out?
86 to its many parts.
That is kind of what's happening with Skinny Create 2, is my understanding. It was broken out from 86.
Exactly. So should we just like mark 86 as this is dead and like...
Yes, we don't have a process right now for putting rejected or withdrawn. We really need one because that's actually an EIP1. And that's also something the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians discussed, I believe, so they might touch on that later, potentially. But yes, that's a good idea. Let me put that to withdraw 86. Since we're now kind of busting out pieces of it, that would be a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so do we have any other issues with what we just discussed? Way after hearing Alexi's argument, do you have any rebuttal as far as not using 86, not using 86 when you're implementing 1014?
I think that worked for us, so we just remove the EIP 86 code. I think that worked for us. Yeah.
Okay, great. Is there anything else that I missed that hasn't been figured out about this? Of course, pending all the counterfactual people chiming in on which, I guess would be which one to use out of Sergio's list for the encoding, or the other cases for create two addresses. Is there anything else I'm missing? Great. I think we figured this one out for the most part, and we can move on. So, what is the next one? So the next one is a successor to 210 simple block hash refactoring, and we keep going back and forth on this, and I kind of wanted to decide today if we're just going to kill it or if there's any reason to keep it alive for Constantinople. And at this point, we were looking last time for a reason to implement this and anybody that will champion it, and I don't know if we even have that still. So, is there anyone here who has opinions on EIP 1218 simpler block hash refactoring, and any reason we should put it into Constantinople?
Who's the author of that one? Do you know offhand?
That was Vitalik. Vitalik, I think, was both 210 and 1218. But I remember last call he had a reason for it. Let me look at the EIP and see.
I believe the main reason for that is the light client support. And I think in order to decide whether we still want to keep it or not, we have to ask the people who implement light clients. That would be the best option.
I see. Okay. Um, who at Parity implements light clients? Fred. I forgot who it was. It was someone.
Sorry, I had to move out of a noisy area.
No problem.
Sorry, what was the question?
Sure. So, who implements light client support at Parity?
It's a mix of people. Pierre is officially the owner of it, but yeah, we have like probably 4 or 5 people working on it.
Okay. Can you ask them basically what their opinion is of EIP 1218, which is a successor to EIP 210? Because according to Alexi, light client implementers may have some opinions on it, because it would help them implement light clients better or something.
Yep, definitely. I will pass it around and get some feedback.
And then, is it who implements light clients in Geth?
Scholtfeld.
That's right. And he hasn't been on a call in a while. So let's reach out to him and see. Let me see. Reach out to Zolt. I have that as a note now.
Has the Nimbus team started joining these calls yet?
Yeah, Nimbus is on here today, actually. Did you? Yeah. Does any other clients have opinions on this? Nimbus or anybody?
We'll take a look.
Okay, great. So the chances of this getting into Constantinople are rapidly decreasing as time goes on because we don't want to be adding anything too late, and this is already pretty much too late. But it's still good to get opinions and see about throwing this in. The biggest reason to not have this is because the testing team, which is pretty much Dimitri right now, said we shouldn't include it. So obviously we don't want to kill it if there's a major reason to put it in, but right now I think that we haven't heard enough people speak up about it, but we want to reach out to the light client implementers to see their opinions. Anybody else have an opinion on this or a comment or disagree with what I just said? Okay. So for now, we're going to get some more feedback from people. The next one is net gas metering for S-Store operations. I know Parity Team was having some issues implementing this. And so basically, if you look at the chart, the people who have implemented this are Trinity, Ethereum JS. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Where is that? No one's fully implemented it yet that I can tell, but I know Geth was not having problems with it, and Ethereum J, you said you weren't having problems with it either, right?
Yes, right.
So if that's the case and Parity's having issues, what they've done is they've developed EIP 1283, or not developed, I should say. I don't know where their implementation is in that, but they've written 1283 as an alternative. So I think Wei wrote that. Do you want to kind of go over the reasoning behind that EIP and what's going on with it?
Yeah, sure. So we had some issue with EIP 1087. So that's just because some organization we enabled after the EIP 658, and it conflicts with some of the requirements for 1087. So the issue is that we can't get the dirty map efficiently, and it either needs to cost more memory, or we need to make we need to do a full diff of the station try, which is expensive, and it makes the transaction that executed later on the block slower. So we just yeah, so that's kind of a performance issue for us. And I know we have different opinions on how much this performance impact is, but this is indeed a concern. And I think in the future, if other clients also implement this optimization, this can also be an optimization blocker. So we can kind of want to yeah. So we got another draft EIP, the EIP 1283. There are two versions provided there. Basically, what it does is it treats the tuple of stored original value, current value, and the new value as a state machine, and you don't need any dirty maps or anything. You just use this as a state machine and issue gas use or gas refund. And in this case, Alexei found out that it covers all cases for EIP 87. Yeah, so right now I'm talking about the version 2 of the EIP 1287 and 83. So it covers nearly all the use cases for EIP 1087, and we think it may be a good replacement. It definitely needs some more reviews. And if your client has no problem implementing the 1087, then you will also have no problem implementing the 1283 version 2. And yeah, so what else? So yeah, so I guess that's basically some all about the 1283. So yes. So basically, because we had
yeah. So guys, I will have to drop off in a couple of minutes, but I just want to say something very quickly about this before I go. So yeah, I really looked at these differences between these two IPs, which were discussed for a couple of weeks, and we believe now. I mean, at least I believe that they might actually be equivalent in terms of like how the gas consumption in the end. The only difference would be that the gas usage at any given point might be slightly different. So it means that the IP 1283 sometimes might require to post more gas up front than the AIP 87. But what I think we should do is that we should try to do that. If we formally prove that they're actually equivalent, then I would just say that the issue will become much more trivial, because we won't need to be the question won't be about which one is better, because they will be doing pretty much the same thing. So I think if that is the case, then we should choose the 1283, because it has a less performant impact. So that's what I want to say.
Can anyone speak up as a counterpoint to what was just said by Wei and Alexei, especially if they understand Nick's argument? Because I was reading through the All Core Devs chat, and I could not understand Nick's counter argument.
Yeah, so the counter argument, I think, is we don't have to go into that. But I think it's not reasonable to. I would like we can try to implement this with Geth in another PR and see if it's equally simple. And if it is, it seems to be the better of the two, since it's less post processing.
Okay.
And so I would suggest that we settle it next time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, we'll try to. I mean, if I have time, and I will coordinate with the way. I think we might try to find out some kind of way of proving it. But it might be for me. I wanted to give it like go and see if it works. And by the way, I'm just dropping from the call. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Alexi. Bye.
Bye.
Guys, can I add a few words to this conversation about the two EIPs?
Oh, go right ahead if you had any comments.
Yeah, even though in Ethereum J, both EIPs looks pretty straightforward to be implemented, I would go with 1283 in case if in terms of gas metering, this both EIP addresses the same problem. My point is that 1283 is a more elegant and technical point of view than 1087. I think we should ask Nick if 1283 addresses the same issue that he has addressed in 1087, and if if he confirmed that they address the same issue, then I would go with 1283. So that's it.
Okay, so it sounds like we have Wei and Alexi looking to compare the two, which would be very helpful. So that'll work out. Just keep us updated in the All Core Devs chat, Wei, especially with updates to the EIP, and we can discuss it on the next Core Dev call. Hopefully Nick will be there to discuss it as well, and I might try to reach out to him between now and then to let him know kind of what discussion went on in the Core Dev call.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Anybody else have comments on that? Okay, great. And Martin, you mentioned that Geth would try to implement it, hopefully.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
And I do want to say that for party we also have a PR implementing the 1283. That was done a few days ago, so it's still version 1, but we are going to upgrade that to version 2 of the EIP 1283.
Okay, great. Next up, or did anyone have any other comments on that? Okay. Next up, we have EIP 1109, remove call cost for precompiled contracts. Jordy, do you want to give a quick summary of what that is and kind of your reasoning behind supporting that EIP?
Yeah, well, mainly it's a very easy IP. Mainly what it is just to remove the gas cost of the calls to the precompiled smart contracts. The big problem is, for example, SHA 256 precompiled smart contracts. It costs only 60 gas, but the same call, just for calling it, it costs 700. So it makes absolutely no sense at all. And because when you are calling a precompiled smart contract, you don't have to load anything because it's in the same code, in the client code. I think it makes no sense to charge with this gas cost. So the proposal is just remove the 700, pre-establish 700 for the calls to the smart contracts. Mainly is that.
Do we have anybody with a comment on that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Martin.
So my comment is that removing it completely is a bit too much, I think, in the first instance. We should be a bit more careful. That's about it. Otherwise, I'm
for reducing it.
Matt.
Yeah, so I left a comment on that PR right before this call. I guess an alternative approach, I don't know if you considered it, is to leave the call semantics the same, but add a precompile opcode to the EVM that then just does the price of the precompile that's being called. It seems like it might be a little easier on the call logic and not have to, you don't have to set up all that scope and stuff depending on your implementation.
I think it's fine. Also, it's solved exactly it's absolutely good. So for me, I think it would be good also to have a different opcode. And the thing is that all the precompiled smart contracts, they already have a cost depending on the smart contract. So yeah, we can set up maybe a minimum, but then it should be added to the gas cost of the specific smart precompiled smart contract.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe something along the lines of your first, you put one item on the stack, and that's going to be, the precompile address you want to call. And if it's there, then it uses the existing precompiled gas calculation mechanisms. And if it's too large, then it has an exceptional halt. Otherwise, it executes it. And then if this precompiled contract is not there, then maybe there's zero gas cost, and it just executes as if it was a no op or something.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jordi. Did you have anything else?
It makes sense just to define for if you call a precompiled smart contract, that's not defined. So specify a kind of gas cost. It could be 700, the same that the normal call.
So this would require a hard fork, and according to Matt's suggestion, it would also require doing a precompile. Am I right?
I think it would require adding an EVM opcode, and in there it just checks for the precompile. I think it would be slightly easier to add an opcode than to modify the semantics of the call to do that. Or at least the gas estimation.
Yeah, what do other people think as far as implementation cost here, and like how difficult it would be? It sounds like it'd be really hard on testing at this point to put it into Constantinople, but Dimitri's not here to speak on that.
So from the EVM perspective, it breaks the abstraction because currently EVM doesn't need to know anything which contracts are actually precompiled. Because it just calls that and just gets some results. So like in some sense, probably in most of the implementations, the EVM doesn't know that. And that would be also different depending on the chain configuration. So that's complicated. So I like what I heard. I like the version with adding new opcode for that. It seems quite better. And something alternative I just figured out would be to allow precompiles to refund some of the gas. Because the refund counter, it's mostly handled by it's handled per transaction, so it's on the boundary between EVM and the client. So that is something that is not strictly EVM is not strictly responsible for. And from the implementation perspective, it might be easier to actually add some gas to the refund counter in the precompile implementation or something like that, and get it back at the end of transaction. So
yeah, but actually, Pavel, as the EAP is written, it doesn't care what is precompiles. It's valid for everything calling anything below 256.
Yeah, I haven't read it, so sorry for dumb comments anyway, because that was like something I just was aware of that during this call.
Right. And I think you raise a good point that, I mean, you know, your abstractions and your code base are different than ours. So it's, you know, it's debatable what's easier for who.
Yeah, I want to add that on this, yeah, it depends on the depends on the precompiled smart contract has already a different cost. So EVM should know that because it's calling a different smart contract, and they know it right now. And about the removing, the adding and then removing part, the problem, well, maybe the problem on that is that there are some intensive, for example, let's say checking a Merkle proof or a long Merkle proof in the chain. This is a very intensive SHA-256 call on that case. And this you will have to add like a lot of upfront gas that part can be returned on that. I don't know if it's a good idea on that. I think it's better just to charge what it's supposed to be. The same way, for example, this SHA-3. The difference right now is SHA-3 is only 30 in gas, and the SHA-256 is 760 if you add it all together.
Okay. Do we have other comments on this? Okay, I hear my cat breaking things. Lane's going to take over for a second.
Hey guys, Hudson warned me this might happen, so all in the plan. Cool. If there are no more questions or comments on this topic, then according to the agenda, I think the last item here is the Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians update.
Okay, great. I guess we can begin.
Lane, just let me say one thing. I'm going to update, just to put in the notes, I will update the EIP 1109 to adding this opcode, this new opcode.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jordi. And then, yeah, Jamie, feel free. Please take it away.
Sure. Yeah, actually, I think Greg might be a good person to introduce the vision of the group. Greg, do you want to get it started, and then Boris and I can talk about Berlin?
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say because for personal reasons, I haven't contributed all that much since the first meeting in Paris. So mostly I've just been gratified that it's rolled on without me, and just the desire to get a forum going where people can meet in person and work together, plus organize their work in between meetings. And I seem to get the feedback that people are really enjoying doing that, enjoying the opportunity to meet in person, enjoying having slightly more structured forums to work in. And they seem to be working out the ideas, not necessarily the way I would do it, but that's just fine. And take it away.
Okay, great. Well, that's a good overview. So yeah, I guess I'll talk about the basic mission and principles of the organization. Basically, the idea is that we want to nurture community consensus and the technical direction of Ethereum. And we do that through ultimately producing high quality EIPs. And of course, all core devs have been doing that. The whole community has been doing that, but there's lots and lots of EIPs. So especially ERCs. And so we want to facilitate the work there and allow working groups to form, which we call rings, and to proceed from there. And some of our principles, two of the key ones is an open process, and of course, how to make decisions on things, which is rough consensus and running code. And some of the key things that we do, the practices, we like to focus on in-person meetings, and that's why we had the Council of Paris and the Council of Berlin, which Boris will discuss. And key places that we maintain, we have our wiki, where we keep our information, and we have the forum, which is ethereum-magicians.org. And in there are a lot of discussions about all the different EIPs and other issues in the community. And it's a threaded forum, and it forms a better place to discuss things than the GitHub issues have been. It's okay there, but when you have a multi-threaded forum, issues get hashed out a lot better, where you give users a lot more ability to guide the conversation and add content and things. So that's the big overview on it, on the Magicians. And I guess I'll turn it over to Boris now to discuss our most recent meeting in Berlin.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I happened to be traveling to Berlin. I met some of you and participated in the Wallet Unconference that happened aside of EdCon, and got really pleased with what everyone was working on. I stuck my hand up and said, sure, I'll help volunteer to organize things in Berlin, and ended up taking that on and getting sucked into really the great community that's forming around Ethereum. It went well. Berlin, we had about 70 people over 2 days at Seabase. Lots of things got hashed out, including really that people had a desire to do more work and to volunteer. I think what was interesting is that a lot of non-technical people showed up as well. I think we're still struggling, even just on this call, with what non-technical means. But essentially, there's lots of people that want to get involved and want to help. And ideally, we can do that. My point of view, and I think, the Ethereum Magicians is a forum. It's a domain. Greg has been really good about indicating that no one's in charge, everybody's welcome, and it's just people that do work. And there's a Greg shared the other day about the Rainbow gatherings and the Rainbow family, and they talk about that as the largest non-organization of non-members in the world. So I'm a proud non-member of the Magicians, and that's kind of what the style that we're going to do, because it's important to the way we're trying to stick to the principles of decentralization. But some of that can help with even just organization. So we have a GitHub repo where a wiki that got formed in Berlin. We have some rings, which are working groups. We see those working groups really much like Hudson already drives the calls and asks for consensus for people working on particular EAPs. It can potentially scale technical improvements by having the people who are interested in certain areas having ways to gather together and come to consensus around that. And when it comes up and impacts core devs and core clients, then we have a set of experts who have hashed through it already. We just announced Prague. We're going to do the same thing in Prague ahead of DevCon. It will not be like DevCon content in that we actually do work and to make progress on EAPs and ERCs. So welcome everyone to get involved, and hope we can help support basically scaling and improving some of the technical discussion and decision making, where the we really includes anyone who wants to get involved.
Cool. Thanks, you guys. That's really exciting. I have just a couple of questions before we end this out. We only have a little less than 10 minutes. So real quick, I know the All Core Devs call was discussed a bit at the meeting in Berlin. Was there any really good ideas or suggestions or things that people might have somewhat come to consensus about how either the All Core Devs call interacts with the rest of the ecosystem, or changes that can happen that make it a little bit better? Because we really want to be kept in the loop on that, we being the kind of the core devs and myself, so that we know kind of our role in the whole thing, or what people think our role should be, so we can kind of adapt.
I'll take a crack at this, and Greg and Jamie can chime in. So I think one of the things that came up there, and I think this spreads to even things like ETH research, where it was clear that questions like who owns the roadmap, how does the roadmap get decided, how do core devs make decisions, how do EAPs evolve? EAPs theoretically are the things that need core protocol changes, and ERCs are the things that are more rough standards at different layers. And I think mainly it was more like this would be helpful if it was written down somewhere, because right now people don't know the answers to these things. So I think there were more questions than answers, and an offer to help figure some of those things out. And that even just things like e-process and rejected and so on, that needs to be tightened down and clarified, because I think, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's good feedback. Do other people have any comments on this, either from FEM or not?
I'll say this much. There was one session in particular. It was, I think I'll just call it core EIPs versus implementation. And I think it was at that session, and there was a discussion about how working groups would come to consensus, and how that would be recognized by client implementers and the core devs, and that there's that the work performed inside of these different rings, and if there's a particular working group that's just focused on an EIP, and there's people coming together on that issue, that their decisions would be recognized and implemented, possibly in clients and possibly elsewhere, recognized as, I don't know if the right word is, or authoritative, but that body that's forming around that issue would be recognized as having some kind of authority, or some kind of wide recognition that what they come to consensus to is the community consensus, so long as the process is open. So you have a ring, let's say there's the wallet ring, and they come to consensus on something, and there might be the majority of the wallet implementers are involved, and there's open process. And then if they reach, if they have their flow that might be very similar to the way the core devs or the EIP editors have their flow for reaching final on an EIP, that would be widely recognized and implemented. So that process needs to solidify, and I think that the all core devs have done a really good job to lead the way, as have, of course, the EIP editors. And so the more education there is, like, that's a big component of Magicians, is educating people on these processes, and then facilitating these rings so that they can start to govern their domains. So that's my perspective on it. I'm gonna see what you guys think.
Yeah, that sounds great. Anybody else have comments before we go?
Yeah, just a quick one. Something that would be interesting to hear from Jamie, Greg, and or Boris on is for the core devs, right? How can the core devs contribute or get involved?
I think one way, I was saying this recently, is the core devs is like a ring, really, that like it's the first ring before Magicians or anything else existed, that makes decisions about the protocol as defined in EIP1. And I think as such, it's established many of the conventions that we're all following. So I think the more that the core devs can describe its process through articles or more documentation, I think that would be very helpful for the wider community, that the wider community could see what makes the core devs work. Why is this working so well? And EIP editors have done better with this in particular, because they have obviously EIP1 and all of what's going on in the issues. So I think the more that can be done in that regard, like just documenting and participate, just showing up really to the open process at the Magicians and contributing to that, and changing that in a way, because I think the experience here is so great you know, bringing that out and helping everyone see why it's working, and then spreading that to all these other efforts, these rings, I think that would be my recommendation.
So in the spirit of decentralization, and it's crucial, I mean, the SEC's recent decision was in large part based on this is decentralized. There is no organization controlling it. We can't really call it money or anything like that. And so the openness and decentralization really counts. And you know, to a large extent, core developers simply by as developers participating in the rings that are relevant to the IPs that are relevant to them just means that by the times things get to the core devs, a lot of stuff has been hashed out and it's just much easier. The core devs aren't facing controversial choices as often. And this is what happened with the IP editors. We got, you know, some very controversial proposals slammed into us, and we had to clean up our process such that we could handle those. And to some extent, the magicians, you know, took on handling that sort of controversy. And to some extent, we tried to draw lines and say, we're only handling technical controversies. You can take your political arguments elsewhere. And I don't know where elsewhere is, but it's not here. That's that.
All right. Well, cool. Well, we're out of time. Thanks so much for chiming in, Fellowship of Ethereum Magicians folks, and thanks everyone else for participating. I have a long to-do list to reach out to miners, to reach out to a few other people from the Light Client team, talk to Nick, and so hopefully we all get this stuff done, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Hudson. Thanks,
Thanks,
Hudson.
Thank you very much,
Bye-bye.
Hudson. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.